having said that, our party has given them 48%.
Yes.
Some people, I think I heard some you could say 48%.
Yeah.
Other people, I think yesterday on the show, one of our ladies, what is her name? Dr. I remember hearing her. I reviewed your show in the evening. She was giving about 42% or so. Okay, 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, with Annie.
Okay. On
Yes.
Good Afternoon Ghana.
Yes.
Okay.
So she was giving 42%.
Okay.
My mark will be lower, but I will come to why mine will be lower because of my unique experience. Why are we saying that? You see, aside why you rise in social contracts that we saw in the documents, in political theory, there are also implicit contracts that almost every government is signed to. Locke, for example, insists that the responsibility of the state should be to preserve individual liberty, the right to life, and possessions. We can assess the government in these particular areas. If you look at the moment they took over, it was as if Ghana was returning to the state of nature. Party surrogates everywhere, not only terrorizing members of the MPP, the opposition party, they were terrorizing electoral officials. Even up to now, some issues still lingers on. So individual liberty in that respect. And if you look at our constitution as well, the constitution emphasized the independence of the judiciary. Look at what is happening currently. Even though I accept that the constitution is seriously flawed, nevertheless, the spirit of the constitution is to preserve independence of these three arms of government. Why is it that as a country, almost every day we have a need to talk about constitutional provisions? Countries like United Kingdom do not even have a written constitutions. They should have more disagreements. How come it is us who are having more disagreements?
Okay.
And I can attribute some of these blames to the NDCs. When they were in opposition, they talked down the judiciary to the point that it reflected in the Afrobarometer report. And when they came in, regardless of whether people said they are following the letters of the West written in Article 146, but we knew from their utterances last year that they have an agenda against the judiciary. The chairman of the MPP, who has a huge presidential ambition, made it very clear that regardless of what happened, the CJ ought to go. I've heard Mustafa Bandi say that who had the hearing of the speaker, and understood he's a deputy director of operation at the presidency, meaning that these are direct surrogates of the president who said the chief justice ought to go. So we know that they are going after the judiciary. And this is why a lot of people are very skeptical about. To the extent that people are suggesting that they try to bloat the judiciary with their sympathizers, said that the judiciary might be asked to reinterpret, giving opportunity for President Mahama to go for third time. Individually and personally, I do not believe it. But living in the African continent and watching what is happening within our sub-region, and the fact that we have weak institutions, if we were to have strong institutions like the United States, it would not bother me. I wouldn't lose sleep over it. But if people are beginning to say this and listening to their utterances, especially when after the election they had the opportunity to meet the president, people were calling him our supreme leader, suggesting having a link with the Ayatollah of Iran. Some people said he was our dear leader, a title often preserved for dictators of North Korea. I'm very, very frightful. So I want to believe what people are saying is not true. But because we have very weak institutions, and with our experience within the sub-region, especially Ivory Coast, where he came as a Democrat and ended up as a dictator, changing the constitution to have more and more term, and even our first opportunity to govern ourselves. If you listen to 1998, Professor Ali Mazure gave a lecture about the life of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah when he said Nkrumah started as a fine Democrat and he ended up as a dictator. All those things frightens me. Okay. But I still have hope that he does not want to seek a third time. Let me tell you why I will score him 30%. And that is uniquely mine. And I have every right to score. 30%. Yes, I will score him 30%. As I said to you earlier, even though it is not written in Constitution, but political theory tells us that implicit in social contract of every government in every state, especially that of the theory of John Locke, the right to liberty, the right to life, and possessions are implicit in the social contract we have with the state. As somebody coming from Wale Wale, we have been seriously shortchanged. Why am I saying this? I agree there had been unlawful attacks on the highways, on the international highway, which is quite close to Wale Wale. What would be the appropriate response if there is unlawful attacks? Is to take measured, what they call it, is to take appropriate measures to curb it, especially when the attacks happens during the day. When attacks happen during the day, what has the government done? They have more or less embarked on collective punishment across not just Wale Wale town, but surrounding towns around the area, Nasia, Lori, Kukwa, Bimsi, and Wale Wale town itself. They have more or less put us under what they call a curfew for the past 3 months. And the question will be, what have we done as a people? If there are unlawful attacks, your response is a collective punishment. So that social contract that John Locke spoke about, the right to liberty, we have been shortchanged over there. And before this state of emergency was declared, 2 people have been killed. I heard the President's State of the Union, the 120 days address, talking about dealing with injustice and correcting them. The 2 families who have lost loved ones have not seen justice. When they heard I was coming to this program, they called me and urged me to remind the president that the 120 days social contract he's talking about, they have been denied justice. And the president doesn't seem to recognize them as citizens of Ghana. The people of Wale Wale asked me to remind the president that they haven't seen justice. They are still suffering from collective punishment. The justification that he gives is irrational. When attacks is happening in the day, take appropriate measures to stop such unlawful behavior, but you do not collectively punish everybody. For me, these are basic contracts every government needs to keep. The failure of government to keep these particular 2 promises to the good people of Wale Wale and the surrounding areas made me to depart from my party by giving the government 30%. This is where I'll rest, and then I'll get an opportunity to come back. Okay.
I was wondering how you arrived at your 30% mark.
Yes.
For the performance of the government.
Yes.
And I wanted to find out what metrics you used.
Oh, I used, yes.
You know, and because the promises that the president made.
Okay.
That the promises he made, which we all have, is public knowledge.
Yes.
25 of them.
Yes.
And yesterday when he was addressing Ghanaians, he walked us through almost all those promises.
Yes.
And told us at what various stages they were. Some of them were just launch, establish, initiate. You know, those ones, you can't have any conversation really about what extent of implementation, because the person says, I'll launch it. So once it's been launched, a box is ticked.
Okay.
And that's why I want to find out how you arrived at your 30% mark. How did you do it?
Yes, Ibori, you remember I told you some of these promises were low-hanging fruits.
Right.
Somebody cannot score highly for simple resolving a low-hanging fruit, such as the 14, within 14 days, I need to put my cabinet in place. As I've said, they are low-hanging fruit. Should we give them higher marks for that? If you move away from there and come to the abolishment of e-levy and betting tax, again, this is another low-hanging fruit. Abolition is easy. But when it comes to the heavy lifting, the government has run away from it.
But Ishaq, if the government, led by the president, had not abolished or had not taken these decisions, I'm sure you'd have sat here and said that the man said he would initiate this, he would launch that, he would abolish that, he's not done it, and so he's failed.
I've already said some of them. I've already said some of the COVID-19 tax. I've said it. Not I would have.
Good.
I have already done that. But nevertheless, the government have done that. I congratulated him. But I said they were low-hanging fruit. Abolishment is easy. But the heavy lifting, the government generally haven't done it.
Yeah, but you're not, are you marking the government based on how it has implemented the policy, or you're marking them based on the very promise they have made, which is if they say they will launch, they've launched?
So what I've used is
that's it.
I have got a scale that have to weigh what they have done.
Okay.
If you weigh that, does this one worth so much marks?
But that's what they promised.
No, I understand that. So if you are just marking what they call it a point, without weighing them, then probably your metric could be poor. But
no,
if something is...
My point is that... My point is that... Is what has been delivered what was promised?
Okay.
For me, fundamentally, that's the question.
No, but you have to remember
the conversation about whether or the extent to which what has been launched, initiated, or commissioned or whatever, the extent to which those policies have been implemented, is another conversation we can have.
Yes.
Do you get the point? We can look into those issues in much greater detail.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is that if I tell you I will appear on Good Morning Ghana as a promise, and I appear on Good Morning Ghana, but I'm not here for 2 hours, I have made an appearance. Or for 2.5 hours. Okay. Now, what I said here, whether it made sense, it didn't make sense, that's another conversation we can have.
But that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I'm saying that, are you looking strictly at what has been promised? Or you want to go beyond what has been promised?
You remember I told you, if he's talking about social contract, what has been promised is not what is written. What was orally said as part of the campaign trail.
So you're looking beyond the 25 promises that have been made.
It's a social contract. Contracts are not just what is written.
Yeah, but no problem. But I'm saying that even when it comes to the 25 promises that were made, you are saying, so you see, in one breath, you're saying that if something is promised, so for instance, the NDC said they would say this one. So look at this. Establish an accelerated export development council to promote exports as part of a broader strategy for economic transformation. Now, as we speak, it has been established.
Stop where you are. Good. The heavy lifting part. The first year tuition fee. You've just jumped it. Let's continue.
No, you're not getting the point. I'm saying that. If they say they will establish something, and it's been established, you just have to mark them.
You just have to mark them.
Just mark them.
But you see, they weigh differently, don't they?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's a separate.
To organize a conference, Ishaq can easily do that.
Yeah, but that was what was promised. So maybe what you should be telling me is that at the time that the social contract was being signed, you should have then perhaps as opposition, as an opposition party, or sorry, at the time a party in government, you should have then been saying that these promises you are making, are much ado about nothing. So change it. But rather tell me that I will establish and do this within a certain time frame. If you were able to push and that was done, it was written in a piece of document. And the party in government just comes and says, oh, we have established or we have launched or we have initiated. And yet the president doesn't go beyond that to tell us that beyond the launch or beyond the establishment or whatever, we've also done A, B, C, D. Then you can raise the argument about heavy lifting. But the heavy lifting argument doesn't even come in at all.
It comes
because that was not, you see, you were not promised that something was going to be established and it was going to be executed within a certain time frame. That was not what you were promised. You were promised that something was going to be launched. Whether it's going to take 4 years, 3 years, 1 year, 2 years, that one, it's not part of the social contract.
And this is why we should be congratulating government.
So that's what I'm saying. That if you say that for merely, and I'm using your word, for merely instituting an initiative which was promised, it should not be counted because we do not know the extent to which those things have been implemented. I'm saying that's a bit
So
intellectually...
if what you are saying is what we should
it's
go...
intellectually uncomfortable.
No, it's not.
That's the point I'm making.
If what you are saying is what we should go about,
okay,
that even if there were low-hanging fruit, we
Yes.
needed to push government
But
to
that
go
was what
beyond.
was promised.
No, but let me
The
clarify. I
low-hanging fruit were
understand
promised.
that. So is it this low-hanging fruit that the president took time out to praise himself for 120 days and is asking her to pat him at the back?
But that is what he promised. He has delivered, hasn't he?
If we were the parent, and this is our child, and these are the standard we put in place for him to achieve,
Ishaq.
we'll be filling our role as a parent.
All right, that's fine.
That low-hanging fruit,
I'm
we
just
should come
saying that
and
you're
praise
raising
him.
an entirely different argument.
No,
And we
it's
can look at
not.
that.
It's not. Because he says it's a social contract. And a social contract that has some that are not explicit.
Okay.
We have to use them. Okay. There are some that are not written. Mm-hmm. They are oral contracts. So you can't just come and say things that what that was promised to people orally.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So the president says, so the first one, he says, nominate within the president.
Okay.
Nominate, so let's say, okay, so the NDC, when they were the opposition, promised as
Yes.
part of the 120-day social contract.
Yes.
They say nominate within the first 14 days.
Yes.
The complete list of cabinet ministers or parliamentary aspirants.
Okay.
So the president has done this. Would you say it's a low-hanging fruit, so we should discount it?
I've already explained to you. Yes, it's a low-hanging fruit.
So we should discount it.
You see, why is it a low-hanging fruit? When we were in opposition, we could easily predict who was going where. And if a new market writer predicted that in parliament.
And I'm saying that.
And as I told you, in the parliamentary system, these are shadow ministers.
But that was what was promised.
So that's
whether
not,
it is light,
so
small,
then
big,
do not
medium,
tell
that's what
me,
was promised.
do not then tell me to come and appraise it for your 120 days. Something we can all predict.
Okay.
I mean, why can I congratulate you for
All right.
that?
Okay.
Something I can predict.
Okay.
Even though I don't have executive power.
All right.
Then we are setting very low standards.
Okay.